Welcome, everybody. Hello, this is Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast with Kishore Chandra, Achyuta Gopi, and myself, Dayal Guranga. We are so glad to welcome you into this Monday after a extended weekend. We had Friday off because Kishore and I went on a digital detox weekend upstate New York. We just came back online last night and checked each of our 872,000 emails and text messages that were waiting for us. We're all caught up now. So, but we're back. We're back in the land of digitalness. And Achyuta's back from the realm of illness. I wasn't feeling well last week, and so we didn't get to see her. But how have you been, Achyuta? How was your week last week? How was your weekend? And how are you doing?
I went on a full detax. You
A full
guys, you guys,
detox.
you guys did a light version with the
All were all the gates of the body illuminated?
yes. I'm a fully self-realized soul now.
Fully self-realized. Yes. Um, Beautiful. And how are you this morning, Kishore?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
Kishore's going to Brazil today.
I am. I'm going to Brazil today.
Today to go see his sweetie,
Yeah. Yeah.
who's also here with us. We love you, Brudge. And Lilesh already is in Brazil. I don't know where they are, if they're anywhere near each other. Anyways, we're cruising, and we've been reading through the Journey Within. We had a conversation on like, are we going to keep reading through the Journey Within? And we're not really reading through the book. We're kind of jumping around in sections, and it's kind of like, well, when do we stop reading from the Journey Within? And we just thought we'd keep going. And I pulled up in this section that we had seen a few times. Felt really good. Page 146. Don't criticize others for your benefit and theirs. There's a lot of people who criticize, and I want to criticize them by reading this in a passive aggressive manner. So here I go. I'm just joking. Would you guys like me to read, or would somebody like to read?
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay. So the way we've been doing this, we read a little section from the Journey Within, and we probably will pause after the first paragraph. I haven't read this paragraph in a while, so I don't know what's coming up. But section titled, page 146, Journey Within by Radhanath Swami. Don't criticize others for your benefit and theirs. Criticizing others is often like pointing out the dark spots on the full moon. The full moon is resplendent and radiates volumes of soothing moonlight. Yes, it has a few spots, but why focus on those when the moon is so brilliant and beautiful and beneficial? Everyone has faults, but more important, everyone has a beautiful soul. We have the power to choose whether to focus on people's virtues or their faults, to fill ourselves and them with positive or negative energy. Jesus told his disciples, if you're about to offer your gift to God at the altar and remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there and go and make peace with your brother. Then come and back and offer your gift to God. When Jesus was asked by his disciples how many times we should forgive a trespasser, they repeated that earlier teachings had said 7 times. Jesus, however, suggested that we forgive 70 times 7 times. I have no idea what that number is, but it's a lot. To be that forgiving takes a strong spiritual foundation. I'm going to pause right there, and I want to unpack that last sentence. You guys have stuff that may have come up, but to be that forgiving takes a strong spiritual foundation is something that came up to my mind. But before I launch into my soliloquy, I wanted to check in with you guys if something came up you wanted to say or share.
I was just thinking about the fact that whenever we talk about forgiveness, I feel like what happens first is everybody always brings up the worst people that they've ever heard of in the history of the world. So like you read a passage like that, and the first thing that I feel like people are like, but what about like the Stalins of the world? I was like, we clearly are not talking about the Stalins of the world. We're talking about your everyday
Start
interaction.
simple. Start simple.
Right. And I feel like there is a way to respectfully forgive someone without allowing them to trespass against you again, in order to use like biblical terms, because we got Jesus. But
We're trespassing.
right. So there's a way to respectfully forgive someone even from a distance and still maintain your boundaries
Yeah.
without allowing yourself to it's like we swing between these extremes. It's like either I am spiritually sound and I can forgive, but I'm also a doormat, or I'm a bitter person who shuts everyone out and I'm like the grumpy smurf of bhakti yoga.
The grumpy spurf of Bhakti Yoga. That's today's title. Write that down, somebody.
Okay.
Um, I love, and I want to hear from Kishore because he's always got good thoughts. But what I was pulling from what you were saying, Achyuta, was the idea that forgiveness is like a muscle, and sometimes we think we have to immediately catapult ourselves to the Olympics without realizing, like, let's just start lifting some light weights and build that muscle up. And what I got from this place of, to be that forgiving takes a strong spiritual foundation, like why that statement stuck out to me was the idea of there's capacity. Forgiveness isn't just like a switch, it's on or it's off. Like it's a blanket. I'm all forgiving or I'm not forgiving. But there are certain things where I can start and it's like I don't have that capacity yet because I don't have the spiritual um fortification in order to allow myself to kind of let that go. There's still something brewing with me. I don't have the capacity, but where can I start forgiving? I think is a great question. And so if I'm not able to extend myself fully there, like sometimes we go and it's like, I just grip my teeth, I just have to do. And it's like, how can I start to slowly build that muscle in order to get there? Kishore, what's that smirk on your face?
I agree with all of this in principle.
But
But
there's this one person,
I
let's just call them.
I just think that yeah, I love the idea of that Achyuta was talking about learning how to be forgiving of someone, and also what you were speaking about, Joel, not going to the Olympics right away. Learning how to be forgiving while still understanding to not let people trespass, because I think that that's like the big place where people get in trouble, where people get burnt, where people think this forgiveness business is just nonsense because I forgave you and now you're coming for me again, you know? And so I think that I'd like to really understand a little bit more about forgiveness, because I remember once I read a book called Radical Forgiveness. It was a recommendation from someone, and it was really beautiful. And it was really like amazing and intense. The main concept of the book being radical forgiveness, that you forgive radically.
Sounds radical.
It was very radical. And the main concept of the book was exactly what is being said here. I can't find. Oh yeah, that we have the power. Everyone has faults, but more important, everyone has a beautiful soul. That was like the main concept of the book. That like everyone has a soul. Everyone has like love and bliss and joy inside of them. It was actually quite Krishna conscious, the book. But I think I guess just to play devil's advocate, which apparently I do a lot, I just am wondering, yeah, how do we do what Achyuta said? How do I forgive while not allowing people to trespass again?
I have a question. Maybe let's go malfoundational. Like, can we define, maybe it's here in the book, like what is forgiveness?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was
Because I
thinking.
think we throw this word out a lot. And like I've been in conversations with people, whether it's like, and somebody will say, like, I forgive you, and somebody else, like I've been like in mediation sessions and somebody says like, oh, I forgive that person. The person hosting the mediation is like, no, you don't. Like, I can tell you don't. Like, you're saying that, but you actually don't. And we think like that. Does it mean that I just, like, what does that mean exactly? Because I think it can mean a lot of things for people, and it means that we say the words, but we're still holding on to something. Is it that I release anger? I release a debt? Is it I release, yeah? So what does the word mean?
Yeah, I looked it up. The dictionary definition is to stop feeling angry or resentful towards someone for an offense, flaw, or
Hmm.
mistake. So that's your
I love that. I love it because we could have been like, well, forgiveness means let me seek deep down. And she's like, well, I looked up the definition and this is what it says. I'm like, oh, clarity. Thank you, clarity. Kishore is the devil's advocate and Achyuta Gopi is clarity. And I don't know what I'm figure out what I am.
Doyle is our everyman experience. You
I'm the everyman.
ever hear about those like those Christianity plays, those everyman journey plays that they had?
I missed that. Kishore's nodding his head. I don't know. I
It's
lost.
just you see, we would have been in the same like major.
Forgiveness. Not, I forgive you for that. Forgiveness is not feeling anger or resentment towards somebody's past
Well, it's
transgression or
stop
offense.
to stop feel anger,
Stop.
stop feeling anger or resentment towards someone for a past offense, flaw, or mistake.
Okay.
So, but
Got it.
I feel like Martha put up a huge point, which I like in terms of
Mm,
people and in terms of money, right? So I kind of feel like forgiveness with boundaries is a lot like lending people money. If you lend it and you are not expecting it back, it is much better on you. Doesn't mean that it changes whatever that person's actions are supposed to
Hmm.
be. They may have supposed to have paid you back, but if you lend it knowing you don't need it back, it's much better for you. If you're able to forgive, understanding, not hoping that, oh, they won't do this again. If you go in with the thought that, no, they're definitely going to do this again, can I still forgive them?
mm.
Doesn't mean you have to invite them to dinner. They don't become your best friend. They don't have to do all those things. Are you able to just stop feeling that resentment and anger?
Yeah. Were you gonna say something, Kishore?
I'm interested in what stopping feeling resentment and anger looks like because I feel like sometimes that can go towards like it can go into a lot of places. It could go to jadedness. It could go to like self-righteousness. Like I don't need to feel out anger and whatever. I'm good.
Hmm.
It can go to interesting places.
Yeah, I think well I think it's interesting that the language that's used. One is to stop feeling it, which means that you did feel it.
Mm,
It doesn't mean that you don't feel angry or that you don't feel upset or that you don't feel offended or you don't feel whatever it is. It's giving an allowance of feeling something in response to what somebody does. And so it doesn't mean that nothing bothers you. So there's this space where you do feel angry. There's a space where you do feel resentment. And I think that for each of us allowing the timeline of that to run its course. And one thing I remember I was listening to somebody who would a pastor who would give leadership conferences and et cetera. And he mentioned he would do these things. He would coach and counsel people, and he would give this period. He would ask this question that everybody always hated, but he was like, "How long do you want to hold on to this for?" And they would be like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "Pick a date." He'd be like, "Is it a year? Is it 6 months? Is it a week? Is it 2 years? Like, how long? How long do you want to be angry for?" And they're like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "I'm just curious. Like the rest of your life. Like, can we pick like 2 years? Okay, 2 years you're gonna feel this anger, and it feels kind of like weird. Like, what are you talking about? But it's actually quite illuminating. Like, okay, like I have a like because what comes to me from it, I think the turnaround point where we talk about that anger and forgiveness is when we own that anger that we have. What somebody did to me is on them. The anger that I feel is on me. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm not justified in feeling angry. It's not like you shouldn't be angry, you shouldn't be resentment, like you should allow yourself that full experience. But how long I hold on to that and how I let it affect me and to what degree and the extent is really on me. Like I remember for myself when I was because I worked through the steps of 12-step programs when I was in Al-Anon ACUA for relationship um, I grew up my father was an alcoholic. My parents split. And at a certain point, when I, left the brahmacharya ashram, I was like, I don't know how to engage in meaningful adult relationships. And so I found myself in ACOA and Al-Anon 12-step rooms, and I had a sponsor in Al-Anon. And there was a period of time where I was doing lots of inner child work and lots of like reparenting and lots of just like inner reflection and reading like dense books, not dense, but just like you read a page and you're like, oh, okay, I got to reflect on that. There was a lot of reflecting on my relationship with my parents, both my deceased father, my living mother, and my stepfather. And I was remembering that I was having anger. And it's interesting sometimes when you have, like, sometimes if you have like an alcoholic parent or an absentee parent or an abusive parent, sometimes the issue is with the non-alcoholic parent or the non-abusive parent because of a sense of protection, or that you would have wanted or expected that you didn't get. And so I was talking about relationship with my mother. My mother's a wonderful woman, and I'm super grateful for her, and we have a beautiful relationship today, even though my wife tells me I don't call her as much as I should. Um, but I was just discussing, this was 5, 6, 7 years ago. I was talking about anger, and he was asking me like, how am I going to process anger, towards one of my parents. And I was talking about like, well, I need to tell them this and that. And he was like, well, what would come from that? And he got me to this place, discomfort, where he's like, it's your anger. And I was like, yeah, but it's because of this. And it's like, that doesn't, it said it's your anger. Like it's not her anger. It's not her responsibility to do something with it. It's your anger. That's on you. And I think that to be able to own that without then feeling guilty and shame, like, well, I shouldn't feel anger and that, but just owning the fact that it's my anger. I have to make the decision of what I want to do with it. And it sometimes may have nothing, the resolution may have nothing to do with the other person. And I think that answer to your question, what does the stopping mean? It means that I don't need the other person the other person may have done something to ignite this anger, but I don't need the other person to take away this anger. And I'm allowed to have my anger, but I also get to decide how long I want to hold on to it and how I want to begin to, when I want to start letting go of it, because it's really my responsibility of what I do with it.
Mm.
I love you, Mom.
And I agree. And it's kind of like, this is why we bring up this analogy of like, it's like pointing out spots on the moon, because the moon
Mm,
still doesn't care. Like, the moon is going on with its existence. It doesn't even know that you've pointed out all of the flaws, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is a lot to deal with us, which brings in the line from Bhagavatam and from Srila Prabhupada, where our spiritual acharyas say, do not be angry at the instrument of your karma. Right? This is the part that we're
mm,
talking about, where someone has come and they've done something. However, that part is your karma. Now, how you react then determines your karma. They still have to deal with theirs, though. It doesn't excuse anybody from heinous activities or
mm,
offenses. It doesn't mean that you, as a lesser or newer or neophyte devotee, do not perceive offenses, because they do. All kinds of living souls perceive offenses. It's
mm.
going to happen. Like you said, it just depends now on what you want to do with it.
Yeah,
Is it Buddhism? They say like anger and resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer because of it, but it's just you. They sometimes they don't even know how
yeah,
upset you are.
yeah.
Um, and so stopping feeling that, sometimes it brings up a feeling of powerlessness for us, because we weren't able to protect ourselves from whatever happened. And then we weren't able to get anybody else to give a proper response to what happened. And then we think, but if I give this up, this is all I had. This is the only power I had in this situation. It's not true. We have much more power than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah.
But holding on to that resentment as the only power that we have is really just messing us up on the inside. Bodily wise, it's causing
Mm,
stress, it's causing hormonal imbalances, it's causing all kinds of things. So letting go of that resentment doesn't mean that we have to give our power over again. That's not the only place that our power was living. And I think that that's where the strong spiritual foundations and spiritual maturity come in, when we start to realize that we are much more powerful than just our anger or our
Hmm.
resentment or how we get somebody back for something.
Mm.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're gonna if you wanted to share something, sure, but I wanted to just briefly. I love the idea you're mentioning that we're a lot more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. Another idea of is that who's holding the keys to my own healing and happiness and contentment. And when I think that I need this relates to any aspect of life. I need somebody else's validation, I need somebody else's approval, I need somebody else's retribution. I need them to suffer. And it's like, actually, I'm giving you the person that you may hate the most, the person who maybe hurt you the most, the person who that you have all this resentment, anger, you're actually giving them the keys to your happiness because you're needing something from them. You're needing some retribution. You need them to see something, to do something, this or that. And it's just like, it's the worst possible thing you can do for yourself, as opposed to like give that power to yourself and realize, okay, I don't, and that's why I love that line. It requires a strong spiritual foundation. I may not be there. I don't have the capacity. I may need support. I may need tools. I may need time. But it's really, I think another definition of forgiveness based on what you're saying is giving our power back to ourselves.
Mm.
And I think that's a beautiful way of putting it.
Mm.
Kishore is saying, it's either because he liked what I said or he got a text
Mm.
message from Brudge asking when his flight is arriving.
No, no, no. My computer is doing something weird. I'm here. Um, I agree with everything. And I really like these newer definitions of forgiveness that make more sense to me. And I think that one of my biggest things that I'm hearing, and I really appreciate you both, is
Mm.
just like allowing space to feel the things that you're feeling. I think is super important because I think a lot of the times, especially in spiritual communities, people get caught up with like, I'm supposed to be forgiving and I'm supposed to be nice and I'm supposed to fit into the spiritual box of happiness and joy and bliss at all times. And it's just like, I think sometimes people need to hear like, you're allowed to be angry, you know, like you're allowed to like have all of these feelings that you're going through. Of course, what all of you are saying is correct. It's like, you know, we don't want to give the keys to our uh, power away. We don't want to become powerless by allowing other people to have, you know, control over our emotions. That's true. However, I think it's also really dangerous to not to feel like feeling angry or feeling resentful or feeling whatever those things are quote unquote bad, because
Mm.
going back to that original definition of forgiveness, it's like it's to stop feeling those things, right? So we're allowed to feel those things, you know, we can feel those things. And I think that yeah, just to move away from the extremes of like, either I forgive you and I'm just happy and, you know, following Jesus's instructions, or I don't and I'm like an awful spiritual practitioner and that must mean I'm bad, you know. And I think that it's always more nuanced than that. I think that it's very specific also to everyone's specific situation. And I also feel like whatever is going on, it's not going to be a one size fits all kind of situation. You know, it's not going to be like, tell me about your issues. Okay, just forgive him and it'll be fine. It's like, I don't, it's not that simple, you know. And some people might need to sit with that anger and they might need to sit with that resentment for a while, you know, and it's just like, okay, sit with it. You know, it's not for us on the outside to like judge or this or etc. It's like you've all been saying, it's like, yes, I have the keys, you know, I have the keys to my own empowerment and etc. and whatever, but I have to be the one that grabs the key, be the one that puts it in the door, and I have to be the one to turn the key. You know, I don't think that like people coming out and being like, you should forgive and pick up the key and here we go, come on, do it, woo, you know. It's just like that might be helpful, but I don't know, at least for me personally, it's never been helpful. Like it's always been more like, when I come to the realization, whether it takes a year, whether it takes 4, whether it takes 5 years, you know, when I come to the realization, you know what, like I can't do this anymore, you know, I can't be angry anymore, I can't be resentful anymore, that's when real forgiveness has happened for me. as opposed to like I have to rush myself into this, or I have to be spiritual or whatever.
Okay,
Yes.
hear me out. Really, really short point. What if? Because like we like, and as you were speaking, I was like, actually, I think Kishore is completely right. What if it's not completely on us just to give up the anger? Where does
Mm,
it go? It's got to do something, right? So to bring it back Vedically, we
mhm,
just went through a Nishringa Chaturdashi festival. Lord Nishringa Dev is a very incredible incarnation of our dear Lord best friend. But he was angry. So what? This is divine anger. So
mhm,
first of all, how do we think that there's going to be something that is either in the divine person that we don't have a smidge of, or something that we have that won't be in the divine person, right? So now you're thinking, well, this anger can't be transcendental or something that's even beneficial or real. It is, can be transcendental, can be beneficial, and can be very real. Now, Lord Nishringa had taken it upon himself to deliver the comeuppance that everybody needed, that everybody wanted, but he was still angry. So incredibly angry that his friends, the devas, they came and said, look, but it's fine now. You fixed it. Still angry. They tried to get his wife to go talk to him, and she's like, he's too angry. But it did take another person. It took another person. It took a little 5-year-old boy to come in and actually understand that anger, not be afraid of it, not be upset about it, but just to understand that, well, he's angry because of me. It happened. I'm here and I'm okay. And we're okay. And that's the only point where he gives up his anger. And so maybe it's not just on us. Maybe sometimes, because when we've felt like we've given up this powerlessness and we are so angry and something has happened, first as spiritual practitioners, first as people in community with one another, with our souls, it takes somebody else to actually acknowledge, hey, that was messed up. I'm so sorry that happened. I can't believe this happened to you. Sometimes it's all you need is somebody else also to feel that outrage with you for 20 seconds before everybody's able to let it go. And that doesn't mean that you run in and you speak with the person again. There are loads of people that I have not spoken to and I can't even remember why. And that's how I know I've kind of let go of the whatever. I'm like, okay, the principle is there. It's better if we don't speak, but I don't even remember why. It's just like, I'm like, it's fine. And so letting go of that, it's like, do you feel anything? It's like, actually, I don't really feel anything. So yeah, have I forgiven them? Sure. By that definition, no problem. They're able to exist. I can exist. Just maybe not together. Cool. But
Mm.
when we think about it, when relationships break down, when all these things happen and you go into counseling and they're like, okay, but what do you want to happen from this? You guys are not going to talk anymore. That's the reaction, because everybody's always looking for some big reaction, but it's like, but I'm still angry. Either we didn't get the last word in or whatever the fact is. But really, with mediators and therapists, sometimes you just want somebody to feel that collateral outrage with you, and then you can move on.
Mm. Your number's blocked on my phone, and I forget why. Um, I I really appreciate what's being shared, and I love the discussion. Muted myself for a second. I want to hear from Kimberly some of our, because we're out of time, fresh out of time. And I want to hear from Kimberly what our takeaways are for today. She always sums it up so nicely. And then I want to hear from you guys, Kishore and Achita, what you're walking away with. And then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, so today for my takeaways, I got forgiveness is not like a switch you turn on, it's a muscle that takes time to strengthen.
Hmm.
And allow yourself to experience your feelings and own it with compassionate acceptance. We are a lot more powerful than we think, and we have a responsibility on how we respond to our feelings. That's all.
I've been muted that whole time. Thank you. Kishore, what are you taking away personally?
I'm taking away this final point that maybe can be expanded on later that Achuta was making, which I was like very nodding my head and humming at about that. the anger has to go somewhere, the anger or the resentment. It's not just, I think sometimes realizing that maybe me in this situation don't have enough wherewithal to actually deal with this. And I do need that relationship with Divinity to help me through whatever it is that I'm going through. It's not like, it sometimes feels overwhelming to just be like, okay, I have to forgive and I have to get all this anger and all this forgiveness and all this resentment. I have to figure it out all by myself. And I think this idea of it going somewhere or us needing help through the process is something that I'm really taking away with me.
Beautiful. Achuta.
Yeah, same. And it wasn't until my having my sister, and we've spoken to each other about forgiveness and resentment and all these different things. And there was one time where she just said, she's like, you know what? If no one's ever said this to you, I'm sorry that happened. I'm so sorry that happened. She's like, and while I wasn't able to do anything about it, I'm outraged on your behalf. And I realized that I felt instantly better. I actually didn't need anybody to do anything except just feel with me for a second, feel for me for a second. And then I was much more able to move on past whatever it was. And a lot of this, when we talk about forgiveness, we're talking about like the onus, like you said, Kishore, is on you. It's like you pick up this suitcase, you pack it all in, and then you figure out how to untangle it later. But as spiritual people, it's so important for us to actually take these relationships that we have with each other seriously, and revealing one's mind in confidence and hearing from somebody in confidence and sharing one's mind in confidence is one of the most important exchanges that we can have. So don't I feel like we take all the harshest parts of spirituality and then we put that on ourselves and we're like, this is how I'm supposed to live, and we give ourselves the harshest reality. But it doesn't have to be that. There's also moments of sweetness. We're supposed to be there listening to each other, talking to each other, gaining friends,
Sweet little friends.
You know?
Beautiful. Thank you both. For me, I was taking away the phrase that's coming to mind is that I don't have to do anything, because I was hearing that coming up a couple of times, like I have to do this and I have to do that. And I was just thinking that when there's spiritual instruction, quote unquote instruction, it doesn't mean I have to do anything. Like the title of the section was "Don't criticize for your benefit and theirs." And so it's really just a matter of like, what do I want? We brought up this question when we were in the digital tea talks over the weekend, just this question of like, is this working? Like, am I happy where I'm at right now? And if the answer is yes, then you don't have to do nothing. Just keep on cruising. And if the answer is no, then it's just like, okay, it's up to me what and when and how much I want to change. And so like removing the burden of like this spiritual pressure that I'm not doing it right, I need to do more and this and that. It's like, I don't have to do anything. I just simply have to assess, do I like the way I feel, and do I like the way life is working for me right now? And am I happy with my general state of emotions and being? And if not, then what do I see I can change or do or adjust in order to live the way I want to live? And I think that spiritual life in general, we'd all benefit by having that kind of approach rather than you should or you need or you have to do this. It's just like, is this working for you? And if it's not, then I always tell people that empowered living means I have choices. And so I think it's just recognizing my own power of choice, and how I'm living and experiencing life. And so that's what I'm walking away with, and super grateful to both of you guys and to all of us who are listening, live audience and recording people listening to us wherever you're listening. I have no idea how many of you are out there. People are always like, how many people listen to your podcast? I'm like, I have no idea. We checked once, but I don't know.
We checked once and it was a lot.
There's a lot of you. So thank you. Please be well, take care, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow or sometime soon. Bye-bye.